Variety. So there is just point that we can discuss later. Once when you see them, once when you go a little bit lower than that marginal zone, damage is already done. Damage is already done. So you don't want to manage your orchard based on deficiencies. You want to be in the optimal range. You don't want to see this. Or even very extreme conditions, extreme case, so-called, sometimes in some elements are very common to see, so hidden deficiencies, and you see them when it's too late. When you have bud breaking and you have lack of boron, it's just too late to do anything. In pistachio, if I'm not wrong, like in majority of the crops, but you can correct me, which one is the most needed macro element? Is that nitrogen or potassium? I guess it's nitrogen.
It's about the same.
Yeah, it's about the same. But yeah, usually it's nitrogen, but let's say in some cases it can be potassium. I know that you're very familiar with nitrogen. Very important element, macro element, which means by the name that is needed in very huge amounts, but also the role of this element is crucial for building proteins, building DNA, RNA, enzymes. When we say nitrogen, we think about growth, and that is correct. Without nitrogen, we cannot be really successful. What is now point? I will just try to stick to the time. My point about nitrogen, that you understand, and I do believe you know all of this, when you manage nitrogen, especially for this unique crop, you need to be very careful on the on and off years. Nitrogen should be managed based on demands. So nitrogen is directly related to demand of the crop. And when we have developed orchard, that demand is coming mainly from the fruit load, from the nuts. One more thing about the nitrogen, how we need to think to be able to manage. Again, going back to the photosynthetic activity. You can put as much as you like. It's that 150 kilos, 200 kilos of nitrogen. If you don't have healthy leaves, which are photosynthetically active, that nitrogen is not going to be uptaken and utilized. Why? There is a certain space and capacity on the root system for nitrogen uptake. There are certain proteins, and you need to have healthy leaves, healthy root system, good developed root system with a good amount of proteins, that nitrogen to be uptaken. So that is uptake efficiency of the nitrogen. Second thing, it's very energetically expensive process. If you don't have a good production, good factory, good healthy leaves, nitrogen is not going to be utilized properly. That's the second thing. And you need to have a proper carbon fixation, photosynthetic activity, to provide a good structure for the further utilization. So healthy leaves, better nitrogen uptake. Certainly, as I said, when you look at the lifetime of the orchard, in the early stages, when you don't have a fruit load, you are managing your nitrogen to develop proper canopy structure, pushing for the growth as much as you are experienced and know what you want to achieve. Later on, after 10 years, when you have a full yielding orchard, that will be mainly come to the yield. Few points, just quick points on the nitrogen. So, nitrogen uptake, I hope that is clear, that is really demand driven. If you have bud breaking, it's not going to be used a lot of nitrogen. It's really demand driven. Once the trees start to respiring, you have a leaf development and fruit set, then nitrogen is highly needed. If you don't have that load, and you are really familiar with off years, nitrogen is not going to be uptaken so much because there is no demand as such. A lot of words here, but I will just repeat what I said. Having said all of this, one thing is important to understand about macro elements. At the early start of the season, everything what you've done previous season is going to reflect and to be a mirror of how good you are as an orchard manager, as a grower. You will need small amount of nitrogen at that early stage, but nothing is coming from the root system as you are familiar. Root system is not active enough. It depends from area to area, especially in the cold conditions. Root system is not going to deliver significant amount of nitrogen to the buds. If you didn't achieve good reserves of nitrogen, you will have a certainly poor bud breaking, and as such species, pistachios, you will not have enough nitrogen for the flowering. Nitrogen is crucial, generating physiological activities from the cytokinins to retain your flowers. If you have a certain kind of stress and not enough cytokinins in the plants, you can have a flower drop. Just to see if I skipped something. So certainly, just after that, when you have full leaf expansion, nitrogen is going to be uptaken more and more. Roughly speaking, about 20-30%, and then during the kernel development and fruit filling stage, 70%. Okay.
In California dates you've got at the bottom of that, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So you've got the month.
Yes.
Study.
Yeah, I will. Yeah, I need to correct that. Very good.
Just a confused sense.
Yeah, sorry for that. That's correct. But yeah, in general, curve is just to represent the idea. And again, as I said, it's a macro element, very important role. You're not going to have any activity from the soil. You can apply, but it's not going to reflect significantly on the flowering. Yeah, just summary on this part. So what you can do, certainly proper nitrogen management, but the most important thing here is to have a good reserves for the next season. And this is certainly related to carbohydrates, but I will not touch this topic just because of the time. We can discuss that part. This comes very important thing here. If during the season, to have a proper utilization and uptake of the nitrogen, you need to also manage your microelements. There is a certain tissue test which you can do to follow what is happening. But we are finding very often in other crops mainly, same even in the broadacre crops and the pea crops, I said I'm applying additional amount of nitrogen, but I don't have any response. To have response on the nitrogen, you need to achieve conditions that nitrogen to be converted to the proteins. You're not applying nitrogen purely to have nitrogen in the plants. You need to have, so whatever form of nitrogen, probably is not working on the screen, whichever form of fertilizer you're applying, is that urea, ammonium or nitrate, ultimately plant needs to convert that ammonium nitrogen has to be converted, nitrate nitrogen has to be converted to ammonium nitrogen and further to the proteins. For this conversion, you need to have a good enzymatic activity. Nitrate reductase is a key enzyme to utilize your nitrogen. If you don't have enough iron and molybdenum for this conversion, your nitrogen will sit there as a nitrate nitrogen, and that accumulation of nitrates can be actually toxic for the plants. So you want to achieve good amount of microelements, iron, moly, and for the next stage to have a good amount of sulfur and ultimately zinc, that nitrogen can convert and do the job and go into the proteins, go into the nitrogen compounds and provide that growth. Okay? I hope this is clear.
Is that actually in the tree or in the soil?
This is happening in the trees.
In the tree.
This conversion can happen in the leaves, in the root, in the trees in general, but the majority of them is happening in the leaves. So it's a good question. In generally speaking, when you talk about form of nitrogen, majority of the nitrogen is uptaken as a nitrates because of few reasons. It's just not so fixed to the soil. It's moving more freely than ammonium nitrogen. And because of the certain pH balance in the plants have an affinity to uptake nitrates in majority of the cases. In some cases like rice or maybe sugarcane, it can be different, but in general, plants will uptake nitrates. And that's nothing wrong about that till a certain point. And it depends from crop to crop. Nitrates can provide very soft growth and less flower buds if you're pushing too strongly. Same if you don't have enough molybdenum in the trees, you can have accumulation of nitrates, and you want to push that nitrogen further to convert to the proteins. Especially in the nut crops where the proteins are important for the quality. Once when you achieve that conversion, you will have nitrogen components which are very important for the plant physiology, for the growth. Plant hormones, DNA, RNA, and other certain polyamines and so on. Zinc is very crucial, but I will touch that point for this. So yeah, this is just one example. It's a lot of words and numbers here, but I hope that you can see. I will just come to this side. That is happening. We use this slide for almond growers because they are pushing for a lot of nitrates in the soil. I've just tried to be practical. If you have a nitrate-fed plant, a lot of nitrogen in the soil, and you don't have enough moly, you can see what is happening here. Much higher amount of nitrates in the tissue. That nitrate is sitting there in the plant, not doing the job, even can become toxic. If you have a good amount of microelement, molybdenum, that nitrate will go down because it's converting to the proteins and converting to the growth. Okay? So you're using your nitrogen, ultimately your money, for the growth, not just to sit there in the plant. That is why you need to ensure good amount of molybdenum in the trees. Just short snapshot. So we have in Corteva plant performance, we have we have different. We can discuss this later, not to occupy the time too much. Different microelements for different stages to push for that growth. We discuss in the next 10-15 minutes two very important microelements. When we think about the growth, usually we think about the nitrogen, certainly about the phosphorus and potassium, but one very important, and I do believe it was issued before in almonds, I'm not sure how it's now in pistachio industry, probably you deal with that already, but just to touch few bases on zinc. Certainly everything starts from the soil, to understand which type of soil and where is the pH, to understand the amount of zinc in the soil and availability. Zinc is usually, like majority of the microelements, a little bit more available in that slightly acidic soil. If you go for high pH, it can precipitate with phosphorus in the tissue or in the soil and can be blocked. So you want to keep your pH on a certain level. Can I just ask you, what is the optimal pH range for pistachio? What is your approach in soil, pH of the soil? Seven or
6 to 7.
okay? Yeah. Okay. That's cool.
Pretty.
Are they good?
Same as my trees.
Brent, are we good with the time?
Yeah, you've got to just really need to finish up now.
Okay. That's going to be hard. Okay, let's start with zinc. I'll just touch the main points. It's a lot of confusion sometimes because we are presenting elements that are doing everything. Every element is doing everything. I just put here direct relationship to the certain physiological process in the plant. And this is very important for nitrogen utilization. The zinc means growth and at the same time is a healing element. When you look at the symptoms, that's the best way to explain the role of the element is to look at the deficiencies and the symptoms. It's not easy to find them all the time if you have a good orchard, but certainly when you think about zinc, you think about growth. It's not very mobile in pistachio. I will jump quickly. So that will explain you how to use this element in the crop. Important on zinc to understand that zinc will directly produce the growth, producing auxin, plant hormone auxin. And that is proven, and we like to say that it's the cheapest plant hormone which you can buy. If you have enough zinc in the tissue, you will have a good growth, good amount of auxins, but also good utilization of nitrogen. When you have a lack of zinc, amino acids will accumulate in the tissue instead of converting further to the proteins. Without zinc, your nitrogen is not going to be uptaken or utilized. Sulfur, I put here because of zinc sulfate or chelate. Sulfur is very important further for nitrogen utilization. So I will just go now very quickly to jump on the next topic. But sulfur and zinc, crucial for nitrogen utilization. Okay? And we can go back if needed. And one more thing in terms of the stress, because we are producing this crop in a very hot environment, zinc is a healing element. Zinc is also used in a human medicine. When you look at your first aid kit, look at the Band-Aid, or look at sometimes is also cream, kind of zinc is a healing for the cells and also in humans, or in medicine in general. What zinc is doing, if you have enough zinc in the tissue, that will prevent so-called reactive oxygen species to accumulate, they will purge them, and that will stop degradation of the outer membranes. From another side, zinc will also save, not just produce, but also save auxins. For the membrane integrity, zinc is crucial. You probably heard that zinc is very beneficial for the fruit set and flowering. It is. Zinc is crucial to maintain the membranes of the pollen in your male plants. Zinc will bring that stability. If you have hot weather during the flowering and some issues and you don't know what is the issue, look at the zinc and boron levels. So you can see on the left side is with zinc and the right side is without zinc. Membrane integrity. Recent research from Patrick Brown and his colleagues to really understand the role of the zinc. This is almond bud, but I have also photo from pistachio. Look at this red color. These buds are loaded with zinc. This is happening just 1 week prior to the bud burst. If you don't have this red, this is zinc is in red, and 7 days after leaf out, zinc is translocating to this apical meristem. Wherever you have cell division and differentiation, zinc has to be there. Zinc is the only metal which is present in all 5 classes of enzymes. Every cell division needs a lot of zinc to have a proper cell division. So if you have buds during the dormancy full of zinc in pistachio, is that a vegetative bud or flower bud? That is a key for success and good bud breaking, on top of other things like chilling units and so on. But zinc is important to be here. You cannot add zinc just prior to bud burst. It's not going to be incorporated in the tissue. Okay.
How much longer is your talk?
I can 5 minutes. Is that okay? Maybe I can.
5 minutes.
Is that okay? Just quickly on boron.
Yep.
Boron is certainly another important microelement for the flowering and fruit set, but also for the membrane stability. I will go quickly through this. Some of the symptoms to explain this role of this element is certainly when you look at the deformity of the leaves, you know that is related to cell structure. Boron, together with calcium, is crucial for cell division to be incorporated in those cells. I showed this before. So this is coming from Patrick Brown. If you have lack of boron, you can lose a good number of flowers. Okay. Just snapshot, while calcium is structural element, providing that structure, boron is there to facilitate the role of the membranes. And in some crops, you can really see the role of this element in the structure, like certain deformity in the fruits. In pistachio, you will see that in the leaves. I will skip this related to auxin production and protection. Specific about boron in pistachios is that not mobile, not flowing mobile element. That will influence the way how you manage boron and application of the boron in the crop, and looking at the phonology when you need to apply and how. Again, it depends on the soil. What is your soil type? How much is this boron in the soil? But usually recommendation, because it's not mobile, to be applied at late dormant stage, just prior to the flowering to do the job, and then potentially can be applied later as a foliar spray. Okay, I will probably stop here to stay on time. It's 3 more slides, but yeah.
Just quickly finish them off.
It's 3 more slides, but I will just probably stay here.
Okay.
And not to rush too much.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, my time management is not the best. But certainly, what I would just want to say and to wrap up with this slide, and I can provide the presentation. As you can hear, microelements are really crucial for your nitrogen utilization. If you don't have a good photosynthetic activity, not just that you will not have good production of carbohydrates, you will have a lower uptake of nitrogen, and you will not even know that. Look at the leaf tissue test. We can discuss that later, how to do that. There is no any perfect solution, but you can make of that very good guidelines and management tool. And certainly think about microelements that they have very unique role in the physiological aspect. You cannot use just a single element. You need to combine them because they have a little bit different mode of action. Together, they will increase the photosynthetic activity and physiological activity of your plants. Thank you.
Excellent talk, thank you, Marko. Any questions, just for a couple of minutes? Yes, Mark?
When you're talking about applying all these elements, are you talking about drip irrigation or with sprinkler irrigation, or is there no difference?
It depends on the status in the soil and in the plants. If you have a good conditions and good soil, you can manage some of them in some years to be applied through the irrigation system. If you have high deficiencies, for example in boron, then you really go frequent applications as a foliar also to provide. Also, if you have tough conditions, and I would say for Australia we have, I would say, harsh conditions in in majority of the cases, then you need to provide foliar applications when the root system cannot supply that demand. If you have a deficiency in boron, you will apply in a late dormant stage. I would not touch flowering as such. Then after the flowering, you will provide boron, and I probably skipped to say that, but you will apply boron because every new young tissue needs boron for the growth. When you think about boron, think about meristem tissue. Is that a pollen tube growth? Is a root meristem or apical meristem? Doesn't matter. It's a young, fresh, undifferentiated tissue. Needs boron for physiological activity. And the worst thing is that you cannot see the root system. No one can tell you what is happening there, but it is important. So in that case, when you have high deficiencies, certainly 50% expansion of the leaves together with zinc, and that can be followed with irrigation during the season, following what is happening there. Usually boron, because it's not mobile, in pistachio, is not applied like maybe in almonds, that dormant, just prior to post-harvest spray. I don't have that information. Some people are doing that. So that would be, for example, case for boron. For zinc, again, think about zinc, it's a growth. Every time when you have a growth and it's not mobile, so we need to, every time we have new tissue, we have to resupply. So there is microelements, it's more about resupplying than quantity sometimes.
Thank you. We might provide an opportunity for people to speak to you at afternoon tea. Thank you very much for a really good talk.